Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all our beautiful Intimate Conversation viewers around the globe. And welcome again to another gorgeous chat we're going to have today with our guest today, who is Jonny Beer. So welcome, Jonny, and I'm so thrilled that you said yes. I've been watching your posts on Facebook. I mean, that's where I sort of seem to pull everybody from. And I'm loving what you're putting out there and the inspiration for men too. You know, like there's not a lot of men helping men that there's some, but I love that. Yeah, I love the men getting involved. It's a great thing, and I love what you're doing. So welcome.
It is time. It is time. I've seen in many groups for many years the women stepping up and joining together. The challenges been not a lot of men are standing up at the moment for a lot of cultural reasons. Yeah. So now is the time. Yeah,
it is. And standing alongside of us, you know, for many years, it's just been very much out of balance. Even in running workshops and things, it's women that come along mostly, you know, all of that. But no, there's some gorgeous men out there doing gorgeous work. So thank you.
Yeah,
I'll just read your intro here and let people see and hear who you are, and then we'll get into this beautiful convo that I know we're going to have. So Jonny is a change maker and a visionary guide to conscious collaborative living. His aim is to inspire and empower people to their highest potential, to help them to transform and heal their lives. We're in a most challenging time of our history, with many people, communities, and nations struggling to cope. I've chosen to dedicate my life path in service to humanity, using all the wealth of learned wisdom and knowledge that I've gained through my incredible life experiences to help those in need. My life has been an amazing journey of self-discovery and awakening, with over 40 years of experience in the field of human transformation, healing, personal development, and motivational work. I express myself in service as a qualified life coach, NLP, abundance wealth practitioner, master chef, Reiki Grand Master, and have many years of study and practice in the fields of shamanism, Druidry, shadow work, natural foods, medicine, energy healing, conscious living, and spiritual counselling. One of the most rewarding and challenging roles in my life has been working successfully in various youth programs, helping many of them to turn their lives around. I've been a mentor to groups and intentional communities, helping them to realign and revision towards their values, principles, and purpose. I also worked for many years in the corporate world as a commercial and operations manager of large multi-site businesses, specializing in workforce motivational training, developing exceptional workplace cultures, and productivity. Wow, Jonny.
Wow, I've been busy, eh?
Whoa. What a great, oh gosh, collection of beautiful things in your kitty. Gorgeous stuff.
Thank you.
So, Jonny, one of the first questions I always ask everybody is, were you an awake, aware child, consciously aware of that you were more than this physical body as a child? Were you that? And if so, how did that work in your family? If not, how did that work in your family? And how did you become, you know, aware, awake, doing what you're doing today?
Well, great question there. I had, from myself, I express more as a clairsentient, which means I really feel things empathically. And the thing was, as a child, I thought everybody else sensed and felt, you know, the spirit world and nature. And life has a funny way of throwing us curveballs.
Mm-hmm.
So as quite a empathic child, I was born into a family constellation that was quite intense. Without dropping down into the story, there was a lot of childhood abuse and a lot going on. So as a young boy, I used to escape from that and ran away 3 times when I was young and brought back into this, which I now see has laid the foundations for my compassion and understanding when I work with people, because I haven't learned from books, I've lived it.
Yes.
So as that young boy, I used to, and there was this beautiful willow tree, and I used to climb up it and hide up the top of the tree, and I'd be blowing in there, and I would sense a presence, and I would cry and feel that pain, and I would feel this kind of presence around me saying, Jonny, it's okay. Look out, look beyond that, and you will move beyond this, beyond that. And I really didn't know what that meant. But as I did shamanism and inner child work, I actually went back to those times, and I realized it was me in the now, out of time, as a shaman, as a healer, going back and supporting my inner child as I went through this. And it was kind of challenging, because in the area that I was in was a lower socio group, and with a quite stepfather who came in, and his story was he was in the coal mines at 12 years old in Scotland, and then he went into the army and he was in the SAS. So there was no option as men to kind of unpick all of that trauma. So he came to New Zealand with all of this inside him, and the only time, unfortunately, it would come out was when he would drink alcohol. So that was kind of the foundation. Then at a very early time in my life, at 15, it was like, Jonny, boom, and I got kicked out of home. Best thing that could have happened to me. Very painful at that time, but wow, so began this exciting journey. And what really held it for me was I loved cooking. And I sometimes jokingly say, because we were so poor, I was always opening up the cupboards and looking what's in there and being creative. But there was a passion that I had with nature and with its abundance and with food. And so began this journey. But I found in hospitality, it's quite an intense, dynamic, I guess, hospitality trade to be in. So I traveled around the world with it, and I met other lost souls, because it tends to bring a lot of that kind of seekers and searchers. And so I really did well within that. I was in, the American Olympic team tryouts, and I won that. So I was right at the top of my game, but there was always that something inside me calling out. And because I wasn't following that, and I was following this lifestyle, and I started to feel burnout, and it was my soul going. So I felt this call to come back home to New Zealand. So when I arrived, I just collapsed. And I hadn't realized, because the last 4 years previous to that, I'd been in the United States, working in different places, and the intensity of millions of people, wow. That was quite challenging.
That would have been.
So in my, I guess, collapse and surrender, there arose inside me this, once again, my future self, or whatever you want to call it, and it started to guide me. And so began this journey. And it started off going to a body, mind, spirit festival up in Auckland. And there, what really drew me was a group called Outer Space Connections. And it was like about extraterrestrials and all of that. And then that expanded out into, so this was like my entry level. But within that, there was like Bashar, who's still around today, a bit like Cryon, with some amazing higher dimensional teachings. And the best thing that I learned, my take home from that, was to follow your excitement, your vibrational energy of what excites you, or what excites me may not necessarily excite somebody else, but it was like a guidance system. But to do that, I needed to come down into my heart. So for years, I was doing this conceptual spirituality and learning about all the realms and all of that.
Yeah.
And what a ride that was. What a ride that was. And it was beautiful.
Mm.
You know, people call it spiritual bypassing and all these terms that call it out. But to me, it was such a healing time because I had been in such a pain existence that it was like a polarity pulled down in the darkness and all the negativity that ping, all of a sudden I sprang to the polarity of that. I was dressing in bright pantaloons and colors, and that was in the 80s. So the hippie era and all of that was still kind of manifesting in my life. And it was a beautiful healing time. But I realized that, and I stayed in there because it was a safe place. And that was great.
There's there's a sense of freedom in that though too, isn't there? You know, just sort of sinking into that, I can just be whatever I am, whatever I am, whoever I am, I can be that. Lovely.
And thank you for raising that, Mandy, because that's the biggest thing in the work that I do now is in this third dimensional existence and the craziness, the madness that's going on. For a lot of people, it's causing a lot of fear and pain and anxiety and all of that. And for us light workers, it's so important not to raise above it all and bypass it, because the greatest teachings I've had is within it. But not to get, it's like not to, you see somebody suffering, not to jump in the hole with them, but to be that light and to guide them. So the greatest thing that I learned was I'm not a human with a soul, but I'm a soul having a human existence. And if I try to bypass the human existence and to step up in this elevated state, which does serve us, and bypass the human experience, I don't learn as much. And so it was important for me in my journey, for other people, and I've got lots of friends who say, no, for them, they stay as a light. But when I have people come, when I've got a 9-year-old child there that wants to kill himself, having this elevated existence and saying, well, you chose that to come into this world and this is your soul contract, it doesn't help them.
No.
It doesn't serve them. But to come into my human form with a human empathy, not sympathy, but empathy and compassion, and to listen deeply, to listen deeply without the intent to reply or to fix them. The spirituality may come later if they so choose, but at that time, there's all this trauma, as I had, all this unhealed trauma through my journey that I've learned various ways through shamanism, Druidry, NLP, life coaching, just how I can do that. But it's a good point that I've learned is not to stay so much in the third world that you become attached to it and it influences you, but for my own benefit is to sit in that space of the spacelessness, and it's like plugging myself in again, recharging. And that's the biggest lesson that I have as a light worker is and I'm working with a lot of light workers and people who are getting drained because it's like boom, and we are batteries. We're batteries, and if we're not recharging ourselves and plugging ourselves into that universal life force energy, and that's what I would do. I would crash and burn every so often. Being empathic and getting caught up into it and that, it does hurt sometimes.
It does.
Finding a
Absolutely.
balance between that.
Yes. And
Yeah.
and I think too, because we have, when we're sitting with somebody holding space for someone, and we still have our own triggers, our own wounding still happening in there, it's taken years and working through all of that, even though we've been in service as such to humanity. It's when that happens, when we're sitting and holding space, and somebody goes deeply into their trauma, there's a resonance there that with us sometimes that used to take me into it, and I'd have to remind myself, no, don't drop in there. Yes, you
Yeah.
recognize it. It's similar. You've got the same sort of stuff going on somewhere. Otherwise, you wouldn't be affected by it.
Yeah.
And having to just come back, remind myself, and come back to that sitting in an observer and holding space and being a good listener, all that sort of thing. But in
Yeah.
working through the processes of those triggers, you come to that place where you're sitting more in that neutral space of observer and can really, really hold space for those people and allow them to empty out, which is really important.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you for reflecting that back to me
Mm.
in such an eloquent way, is because that's what I find. Two observations is one, is yes, because it's quite often as I'm working with somebody and sharing with them, there's a voice going, Jonny, are you listening to this too?
Yeah.
Because everything is a reflection of us. So
Mm.
I find less of the trigger because instead of reacting to life, I'm responding to it. And it
Yes.
is important. Thank you for raising that, because we are space holders.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
it used to be when back in the 80s, when I was started my Reiki journey and the healing journey, it was this, oh, I'm a healer
Mm.
and I'm healing you. And now I feel that we're stepping into, yes, I still use that and those tools and the gifts I've received from my ancestors
Mm.
to when somebody is really stuck and they call out and say, I really need help with this, then I will go in as an energy healer and give it some ease, because
Yes.
then that serves them to open up their awareness rather than say, no, you created all this,
Yeah.
all of that. Man,
And it's a blame thing too, isn't it, in a sense? Sometimes, it feels like, yeah, and a lot of people aren't at that point in understanding that either. I
yeah,
know when I was getting told and trying to understand that everything that I had created into my world, I'd created, I called it in, I actually played that out and made that happen. It was like, what, rapes and bashing? How would I want that to happen?
yeah,
But once you get that, there is no blame game, but it
yeah,
takes a lot to wrap your head around that, change the way from blaming to actually, I am the creator of this.
yeah,
Um, that's a big thing, and a lot of people are definitely not there when they're in that trauma.
yeah. And that's something ourselves as space holders and healers or whatever um, way of expression that we have is to appreciate that is not
Mm.
everybody comes at the same level. And I work with people who are space holders and been doing it for years and years. And then I work with people who are just beginning their journey. And especially, how do you say to a 9-year-old boy or somebody who has been raped or something like that, oh well, you created, oh, that, how
Exactly.
disrespectful. And that or to go into the rescue mode.
Mm.
The most powerful thing I've found for people is to create the safe container, the safe space that then they can sit within, and when they're ready is to tell their story,
Mm.
not from their head, because quite often they will start to pop up into the head and the
Yeah.
story about what will happen. But I always invite them when they're ready to share is to drop down through a process or some processes
Mm.
that I have down and for it to share it from here and yep, the emotions will arise and all of that. And then for me to listen deeply. And it was Thich Nhat Hanh who taught me, apologies for the pronunciation, who taught me that about deep listening.
Yeah.
And because yes, with my enthusiasm and desire to help people, sometimes I would jump in. And that came from a place of love.
Yeah.
But through his teachings and nonviolent communication, when I would sit there and allow those moments of space, because I might think, they finished, but that could be just one level.
Yes.
By sitting without the intent to reply, they would quite often drop deeper. And we can do that in our relationships. And I work with people in relationships and how to do that. And relationships can be challenging. That's been my biggest teacher.
Yes.
It's like when somebody shares, of course it'll be trigger. No, that's not what I meant, and all of that.
Yeah.
And it's like when we sit deeply, it allows our partner to explore that space because they know that they feel safe, that you're not going to jump in, as challenging as that can be.
Yes.
And then in that safe space, more comes out, deeper levels, allows them to drop deeper. And then you start really going into not only this lifetime, but through the shamanic work that I do is the family constellation, the genetical lineage that's stored somatically in our body. They're attaching to that. So not only their inner child and their trauma, then it starts. And because in the soul whispering that I do, already as soon as somebody connects, or I might even get a sense of somebody connecting, I'm already working at the soul level. And then in that connection, I'm following the soul lines. It's like a spider web, and there's the mother and the father and the joining of these two lineages, but not just genetically. We have soul constellations or soul groups that are not always genetical lifetimes. Sometimes they're soul lifetimes.
That's right.
So, yeah, with all of this, it kind of brought me after my Dancing with the Fairies days, and that was beautiful. I did a course called One Brain, which was about balancing. And I was in this community that was left brain, right brain, and they were trying to form a community. And the people who were coming in would try to logically, and well, if I'm investing in money, how's that going to work? Right. And there's the other people who were like, oh no, just trust in the universe. It's all, and it'll flow. And I was sitting somewhere in between through this course, and I'm going, well, yes, I'm in form, but I'm attached to the formless. And so this formless that's coming through in this human form. So began my dance with form and formlessness. Right. And if I stay completely in this formless, elevated state, what's the purpose of being in this form? Absolutely. And at one stage in my shamanic journeying, and I was in this beautiful dimension, and I went, wow. And there was an invitation to leave this dimension and go forward. And I looked back and I went, no. And not did I look at the pain, but I looked at the joy and the love. And there are beings that would love to have this human experience and to taste strawberries and to taste love and all of those that non-physical beings would love to have that experience with. Yes. So I honor this form that I'm in, as challenging as it can be sometimes.
Absolutely, yes.
It is a dance.
Yes,
so
it is.
My journey began, and if I may kind of lead on to where I'm at now, was the dance. And because I was a chef, I'd started to realize and look out, and I saw the clientele. They were getting more unhealthy and bigger and having more health issues. And I started to go, well, why is that? So began my journey into food medicine and nature and the growing of it from source and organically. And I became a vegetarian, not through any sense of wrongness about meat.
Yeah.
It was a sense of, for myself and raising my own vibrational energies, the amount of meat as a Taurian male chef. Wow, I was consuming too much of it. And I realized it was impacting my vibrational energy.
Yeah.
So, and also if I, even when I was working with meat, the vibration of it, if it wasn't ethically sourced, I would feel all of the trauma in the meat. And there was a shaman who said to me, Jonny, you know, with this vegetarianism, don't get too carried away with yourself, because the same is happening with plants. The same is happening with water. You know, whatever we're taking in, music, sound, everything to me is vibration.
Yes.
And whatever we're consuming in vibration, wow, has an influence on us.
Does.
So my journey began in food. So I thought, well, I'll write about this. You know, by my awareness, I did a course with Don Tolman, a beautiful man who has whole food medicine. And I embraced that, a few years of learning about that. And as I started to share that, I went, hold on, this is only part of it. Because the emotional aspect around food, that's part of it. And the harvesting of it, well, that's part of it. So I expanded it out and put in, yes, the emotional eating, and then the mental part. And it expanded out and expanded out till I had this revelation, which was a big one. We come into this world and we don't have a manual, a manual of, well, this is, and at that time I was called John.
We certainly don't.
This is John, and this is how John works. A lot of it is imprinted onto us by others, and projected onto, this is the world. And we're this beautiful, yeah, I was beautiful baby going, goo ga ga ga. And it was like, hey, Jonny, hey, you're this and you're that. And wake and look at me. And so we're drawn through this world of vibrational energy and seeing everything as energy and colors into this physical form. But a lot of that form becomes so, don't do that, do this, and school and whatever, that we're taught that form is all that exists.
Yes.
And the only way we can relate to that is through creating all these personalities or personas that are created for us. So I became living as a personality, and don't do this because other people may not like that.
Yes.
So in my bright psychedelic pantaloon days, that was breaking out from that. And I loved it. That was great while I was in there, and I became a fringe dweller for many years, because going back into the third dimensional form, with all that was unhealed inside myself, was quite challenging.
Yeah.
So to sit and with myself in form, no matter what is going on around me, but not separate from it, not contained or reacting to it, but sit within it and own that I am part of it all, was one of the greatest revelations. So that's where it started as a cookbook, and then it morphed on, and it's been a 10-year journey. And I got it to the stage now where I put it as an online course. And even in that, I'm going, well, hold on, that's only about help to people with the dance of the form. It's like the first manual, and helping people of who am I and where am I and how do I make the journey of change. So that's just in the first 2 modules. It's a 5-module thing. And then it starts to explore as we start to make changes, what gets in the way? The counter intentions, the old stuck energy and stories into us. How can we change over our story? And so that's the first part of it. And then I start to explore, well, if I'm not my story, if I'm not my personality, then who am I? And that can be quite fearful. But it
Yes.
can be, what I like to do is help people to reframe it. Once they're stepping out of their trauma and their story and saying, well, actually, yeah, it's okay to be you, but I don't know who I am. So that begins that journey of, well, who am I? And
Yeah.
it's like, well, let's tap into those deeper aspects of yourself. And that's where the shadow work comes in. The shadow work, we sometimes think shadow work is, ooh, that's the scary stuff. And it can be, as we delve and we see shadows, darkness, and negativity as a wrongness. But sometimes in our life, and for me, I had hidden in my shadows some of my talents, my gifts, my healing gifts, my artistic expression, my music. Oh, Jonny, you're no good at art. And draw this square box, rather than I wanted to go, wee. And that, no, you can't sing, because I had a voice. I had a voice that was more deeper, that high-pitched youth voice. And so, no, boy, you can't sing. You want to sing in the choir? Right, then just mime. And man, the shame
Wow.
felt. And I've gone to voice activation courses and sat with a whole lot of people with similar stories, how our talents have been shut down.
Yes, totally.
And it is. So that's kind of
Wow.
where I'm at, is with this Transform and Heal Your Life course that I'm putting it out there.
Yep.
And it's not that everyone has to do the whole thing. I find that I'm picking bits and pieces and customizing it for where people are at. And the first thing I
Beautiful.
tune in is, where are you? And where would you like to be? And the first thing I get, especially with youth, is, I don't know. And I says, thank you for being honest. Instead of creating this amazing story, it's actually sitting there and surrendering and saying, yeah, I don't know. I don't know who I am. I don't know where I'm going. And even a lot of light workers, healers, and people in this field are feeling stuck. Even with all this stuff that I've got, I still got bowled over.
Yeah.
And if I think that now I've got it all together, then wow, life will come along and go, yeah, right, mate, and throw something in. When I open to life and flow with it, and help others to do that, is come back to that core sense and explore that. If I'm not my story, what story can I create? And
Yes.
rather than just create a story, it's coming back to a core essence of, and as I said at the beginning, what Bashar was, this beautiful teacher or mentor of mine, was saying, well, what excites you? Let's go into those shadows and let's go back to your uniqueness. And if that's all shadowed in and blocked, let's clear some of those blocks and allow that light of you to shine. Wow. And that allows my light to shine brighter.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Lovely, lovely. And I know, running all my drama, when I was younger and going through, and teenage years were very difficult, and they are for most teenagers. I feel all teenagers. But running all the drama, it was like there was just this knowing within me that isn't who I am.
Yeah,
It was like, this is happening, I'm playing this out, but this isn't who I am. And it used to just continually, I'd be saying that to myself, and aware of the observer who was knowing this wasn't who I am. Mandy in drama didn't realize what the heck was going on. She was just playing it out. But I know in my teenage years, I was a bit of a rebel for sure, and came in for freedom and came in not to be told how to do it and what to do. So as a young person, that was defiant. You were a little bit of a rebel. And so I was always in the principal's office, and I was always, disrupting the class and seeing the injustice that was going on from those who were in charge as such. Fully abusing really some of the students in the class, and I would be the one that stood up in favor of them, standing up for them.
Really?
So that was me, but it was like nobody ever asked me in all the time that I was in any school, high school, college, what's going on. Nobody ever asked me, how are you, Mandy? What's actually going on? Because parents at home were great, but my brother is quite a bully. And so I was being bullied all the time at home. And so therefore, for me at school, I was getting angrier and angrier. I couldn't get him. Was my frustration was I just couldn't get him. But it was interesting to me that nobody ever asked me how I was, what was actually going on. So I love that you work with the youth, Jonny, because they're in such need. They're so lost at the moment. They have no awareness of what's going on, really. They're just quite blind to stuff, which is sad.
The biggest challenge or awareness that I've had is because I was working with youth that were in gangs, had come out of juvenile detention. So they were in quite a challenged field, and I would engage with them. And within the form, they had to go through this course, and they just didn't want to be there. It's like and all of that. And they would sit them in desks. So the first thing I did was say, let's get rid of these desks. And because that was the environment that they were in at school, and it failed them. And like what you experienced, my first day of college, for daydreaming and excited by what was going on in my second lesson, because I wouldn't focus, I was humiliated and told to stand up on my desk in front of the whole class and do my work there. And the rebel in me said, and I remember words, I doubt it. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
And so he took me down to the gym and beat me so severely with a cane that I had to go to the doctor. So that installed into me that learning was painful.
Yes.
And I missed out on so much. My biggest learning has been experientially.
Yes.
And part of my what I was showing this academy or these people that were running these courses was we can't create the same environment that created a lot of their trauma to start with, or their learning dysfunction.
Yeah.
Because when I engaged with a lot of, and I still, this was going back 10 or something years ago, I'm still interacting with some of these guys now. Now, the thing was, within the course, there was changes as I started to give them tools. The challenge was they were going home to the environment, still the dysfunctional thing.
Yes.
I believe that we're in this transitional period of time, and a lot of people are blaming, parental or the government or the council, the system, rather than taking ownership. Is we are the system. We voted in, and yeah, I'm hearing it already, all the argy-bargy around that. I don't engage in that anymore. But unless we change our inner environment, so I begin with individuals, and I say, right, we want to change. And the words of Rumi, yesterday I was clever, I was a rebel, I wanted to change the world, so I was out there in protest. Today I am wise and I'm changing myself.
Yes.
And that, when I brought it all back to becoming the change that I wish to see in the world, so as I started to express that out, then I started to synchronize and connect with people to share that with. And it
Yes.
all began with, yep, let's stop the, well, not stop, but let go of the story that goes inside the head. And let's just start to go this inward journey. And that's the bare medicine. That's what I learned through shamanism, is a introspection. And instead of, and this is a course in itself, staying in bed, which is blame, excuse, deny, is getting out your oar, ownership, accountability, responsibility. And you start to row your waka, your canoe, out of being in bed and blaming the system. You take responsibility and an ownership, because we know, and it's so hard in the world, who do we trust? Who do we believe in? What system? Our internal system.
Exactly.
So I always begin with people, and I get everybody on the spectrum coming in, and I say, well, let's begin. Oh no, Johnny, but it's not my fault. Yeah, I totally understand that. But the only thing that you truly have control over, and you've got all the stuff going on inside you, but you've been to the doctors and they've given you medication, you've been for all this therapy, how's that going? All right, the only one we can truly trust, oh, and this is a big one, I'm getting the call through, is because quite often we can't trust ourselves because of the way we're behaving. So I help people to drop beyond that to that core soul self, the soul who's having this human experience going, what?
Yeah.
Looking to connect. Because we put it in the back seat, and it's like we're on the ship and we're in survival mode. So it's egoic mind, or our form is trying to make sense and just trying to survive. But when we step in and bring forth that soul self, that inner knowing, connect with that, and we start to manage and deal with our trauma and get some useful tools, then we're ready to grab hold of the helm of life, batten down our hatches, trim the sails, and sail through this. Then we start to feel, instead of out of control, we now have a semblance of, yeah, I got this. Or else I'm not a victim of it all. You know, I'm taking a bit of ownership. And as we start to sail, and then we can go and start to trim out this way into calmer waters. And in there, we start to see other sailors. We don't become great sailors in calm seas who are going, phew, how you doing? Well, we're raising it up, and we start to see other people, other light workers who are helping to raise this collective energy and raise the collective consciousness of people into this, rather than call it name, third, fourth dimension, the state of awareness. So helping people to, through their greater awareness, connecting with themselves. Then the next stage that I help people is connecting them with nature, the natural world. What a great learner and teacher she's been for me.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that great connecting back with that divine feminine energy, the great mother who gives so much of herself. And this is where I'm feeling a sense to invite the men in right now, is because for a lot of us, through violence, through being shaming, we've shut down.
Absolutely.
This, as a child in the schools and everything I grew up in, to show that was to show weakness, and bang, you'd be literally beaten down. And I'll give you something to cry about. I did a post the other day about it. Wow. And so as men, there is a lot of that, not so much fear, but shutting down of our emotional state, but also as women have arisen, and I've been sitting in groups, sharing circles and various spiritual expressions and festivals and that, where beautiful women have stood up in their power but also in their rage and their anger about all of this that they've felt from the, and I used to think patriarchal was men, but no, it's a masculine energy.
Yes.
And it is. So without getting into the big story about that, so I lived in shame. Not only did I have shame as being a man when I was a youth and starting to rise up, the shame of hearing women expressing and how they felt being raped and all of that. And I went, oh, so I went further, deeper into myself.
Mm.
And I remember one day in that shame falling to the ground and just sobbing, bawling my eyes out in that shame. And my mother, who had recently passed away, she came and she held me. And the great mother held me in her arms as I poured out. And she says, this is not yours to bear. It's not going to serve you like a cross or a badge of honor, being shamed as a man.
Yeah.
And so I felt myself gathered up as a man. And there was much strength in that. And so many women have said to me as I've got in contact, not just with my masculinity, but with my femininity, my love and my compassion, as I've seen over the years, women starting to get in contact with their divine feminine and standing in their power, I've gone, well, what does that look like as a man in these days without being accused of, oh, you're being a man and that's aggressive? How can I stand in my glory in a man as a space holder and be relevant as the divine feminine births in this new age of awakening and awareness? Wow. And how can I let go of all this patriarchal mixed with masculine men energy that has been in this controlling way and felt that we needed to control it, letting go of that shame around that, to stand. And what role is that? And so I'm inviting men to explore that. How can we be authentic and relevant and standing our power without being called out for being masculine, strong, but also loving and compassionate?
Yes.
And I hear so women calling out for that. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
And I watched, my dad was a beautiful, compassionate and feminine. He had his gorgeous, the earth and nature was his way. He was a farmer and shearing contractor and things, but he lived by that, even though he didn't realize that's actually what he was doing. And I observed this as a child with him. And as I grew into this world with him, he showed me how the masculine didn't have to be always hard, and I watched him struggle with that sometimes with other men, being around his brothers or his father or all of that, who were always in that understanding that, we have to be tough and strong and all of that sort of thing. But I'm seeing it today in many men too, with their struggle to come into that feminine, that more softer space within them. And they are already in that, but to allow it to be seen, is their struggle today. And I do feel for them. I really do. I have, watched many go through the journey of coming through into that beautiful balance. And it's a gorgeous thing to witness. And I always had this strong, trust in the Sky Father, the Creator, whatever word we might want to term it, and this beautiful Papa Tuanuku. I had a beautiful faith in her, our Earth Mother. But what I needed, and I knew I needed to learn, was to trust man, to trust the human man person, woman too. It wasn't just, it was a lot of very strong masculine women out there taking their place and, and powerfully, pushing through, bulldozering, through. And so for me, it was that learning to, and when I looked at my name, even Mandy, man die. You know, it was like, allow the man, the masculine, the power of control and all of this force to die, you know, allow it to die. And that's been huge for me, because I knew there were many lifetimes where I secluded myself in my faith to God, to the earth, you know, to the planet, but it was man that I needed to really come and trust. And so learning to trust that within myself, because I had to do that within myself to be able to trust this out here as well. And took myself through many processes of just allowing that and processing through that to trust myself, because I couldn't trust myself to get on, you know, be on time to an appointment even. It was like, what? So there were many things that I needed to sort of, you know, and work my way through in that. But today, sitting in that balance is beautiful, and seeing the men rise up again too with this beautiful feminine coming through. It's gorgeous.
Thank you for raising that, because you know, psychology speaks of that as and the yin yang symbol, that within, say, the woman, there's the anima, animus, and then the men as well. Listening to yourself and awareness came in, as I'd like to share that, especially here in New Zealand, the archetypal man or masculine, which is quite dominant, is the warrior.
Yes.
Which is the sports person, the that forceful kind of energy. In my journey, I've learned there are many archetypals of not just men, because to me, masculine, feminine is not gender specific. And as you said, there are a lot of women who've got their warrior energy thing going on, and man, they're sometimes it's like, look out, Jonny, wow. But, because they and without disrespect, because the male domination was so great that that anima or had to come out in a very masculine warrior way. If you look at the early days of feminism, it was that. But what I'm discovering now is there's some very gentle males, or that are in male form, and now we're exploring such a big thing of gender diversity. But within that, I feel that there's new archetypals that are coming in, and instead of just the archetypals of, say, if we look at the masculine side, well, they're not just gender, but the warrior. There's also the magician, the king, the lover, the fool. I mean, they're all archetypals that Freud and Carl Jung have spoken of for many years. But now we're entering into this new dimension where there are, especially autism and people that they're kind of labeling there. And there's beings coming in who are just blowing these archetypals, which have served us in this third dimensional way. So I've got these beautiful souls that are coming in, and they're trying to exist in third dimensional, and they're going, no, you've got ADHD, PSY, and giving them something for it, or creating a wrongness. Man, these beautiful beings are here to help raise that, but so many of them are getting shut down. So that's part of my journey, is to help. So thank you for reflecting that back, as how challenging it is been for women amongst that. And so I have so much respect for the early pioneers of women that now allows, and not just women, the people who fought for our freedom, and that to allow us to stand here and express ourselves in that. And that's why reaching out not only to men, but to anybody. Now is the time for us to stand in our own power, whatever that is, and play with it and have fun. And because fun and laughter and joy is such a light energy. So
and it's time, you know, when we look over the last few years and we see what we not lost, there was a lot gained, but a lot of people lost their mojo. They lost their track of where they were heading, a lot of happy went. There was a lot of that sort of the higher realm stuff, of our love state and compassion, and all of that sort of just went. And now I'm finding people are slowly thawing out again, and coming back into those places of joy and gathering with in love spaces, and being held in those places and sharing and opening again. And it's such a beautiful thing to witness, and I'm being a part of, as well. It's gorgeous. And I think we've definitely turned a corner in the sense of our awareness here on the planet, and as humanity and these bodies having experience in this form. And I see more and more people now that are really stepping away from the old narratives and the old ways of doing, and moving more into their own creative way of being and living life on their terms, their creative terms. So it's a really beautiful thing. One of the things I'd like to ask you, though, Jonny, is how did you get Johnny Beer? Where did the beer come in?
As a child, the vibrational energy of, I guess it was like, I wasn't a naughty boy, but I was always active and out there. So that kind of, John, come here. And if it got to John Ward, I knew I was in a bit of trouble. And if it ever got to John Philip Ward, then look out, I would start running. So not so much the vibrational energy, but I never really resonated with it. And see, the native indigenous people of Turtle Island, America, and a whole lot of cultures, they may give you a name that people can point towards or know you through, but they name you later, and there's a rite of passage. Right. And this is where I work with youth, is because there is no, and men, there's not a lot of rites of passage as you come. So my rite of passage was through a shaman who was a chief of a tribe, and he called me Yona, and Yona meant bear. So as I started to use it, and I'd embrace the Native American culture, I was dressing, because the shaman had said to me, you need to dress like a shaman. And I went, well, why? And they went, well, because you're creating a container, a stage. And if you dress in a suit, and if people come, it's hard for them to open up, to receive. So once again, going from the bright pantaloons, I had this very shamanic look, and feathers and big swords on the side. And it's like, wow, look out, here comes Johnny. And instead of Yona, it became more playful. So I went from Johnny, more playful Johnny, and then Johnny Bear, was just a natural progression of this expression, who I am now. So when I talk to family, they still say John, and I go, who? Because I'm not that vibrational energy anymore. There's an aspect of me that is there. And this is where I think allowing people to develop and grow and have their expression. And this is what I'm seeing beautiful young people saying, although sometimes it might be extreme, where they're going, I am a chicken, and wanting everybody else to relate to that, rather than I am Johnny Chicken. So Johnny Bear for me, and my bear totem taught me about that cave of introspection. So began a lot of my years of going inside my cave, learning the wisdom, learning the shamanism. And then Bear took me outside, and I climbed the mountain with Bear up to the top. And that's where I met the eagle, or Kahu. And Kahu took me on the journey of rising above the form, taking that elevated look. And that's, I use that in my work as introspection. And now that you've kind of gathered yourself, and now it's springtime for you to come out of your cave. For some people, the technique of elevation, or becoming the observer, but seeing the expanded view, which is I call it kahu energy or eagle energy, it does help them so that they're not coming out their cave and all of a sudden running back in the cave.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, short story, that that's
It's
where
beautiful. And I loved you know, I did a little giggle when I saw the little teddy bear that you use on your post sometimes. And I just loved that, Johnny. I thought this is so gorgeous. And that showed me you know, look, it just opened something up for me with you. It was like I could really relate to that and the sweetness. It just like you were just such a sweet person and so bringing emotion, compassionate and open, you know, which today, oh, it's just so lovely to see and witness. And that little teddy bear, when we did we went for a month around the UK, Scotland, and my daughter was only just on 5 when we went, and we'd found a ngatia here, a green teddy, beautiful green teddy bear, and it was her teddy. We'd bought it for her. And so when we went on this trip to the UK, she took this teddy with her. So we made up these photos of Teddy at the border at Scotland and Teddy on the Heathrow, you know, tarmac and all of these things. And I was always going to make up a little book for her with that, but it was so cute. And that just, you know, so when I saw your teddy bear, it was like just you know, just took me back into the warmth of what that means, particularly for, I don't know, children maybe, but us too, you know, us, the kid in us, you know, it's so beautiful.
it's also the like us bears love to hug, and I have a big hug. Not it's a gentle hug, so it's not like I come here and wrestle somebody, but it's bringing somebody in, and as they fall into there, it's my heart which just expands out with my love and compassion, and you feel them going deeper and deeper. And
You do. I felt it. Totally feel it.
yes, people can tend to come just for the hug, and that's okay. I did one expo, and I sat there in my armchair with a sign which is sitting over there going free hugs, and that's I didn't do any healing other than well,
that is it though,
because there's serotonin and there's chemicals which are released in those deeper hugs and that.
yes.
And so the thing is, with the whole last 2-3 years, the separation and don't touch and all of that, and plus as women have stood in their power, and there might still be some woundings as a male, I'm a bit more respectful. It's not like I come, right, give us a hug. I invite it. And there are some women still healing that, you know, that masculine energy. They're still healing from it. So, you know, I just open my heart and share with them in that way. So good point, Mandy. Really good point.
It's beautiful. No, it's really, really beautiful. And so, Johnny, how do people find you? Like, where can they get in touch with you and, you know, all of that? How do they find you?
As I'm starting to express, it's been important to how do I do that with spiritual integrity? And I've learned all the funnels and marketing and all of that. I'd like to do it with energetically. So I've just, which starts tomorrow, and it's called the Inner MBA, which is spiritual entrepreneurship. So I'm still learning how to reach out to people from my heart. So at the moment, it is through Jonny Bear, my Jonny Bear NZ, which is my Facebook page, or there's the Wellbeing Foundation.co.nz, which is my website. You can contact me through there. So yeah, there's a few different ways, but if you'd like to, because I'm sharing myself and memes and videos and that on my my page, and some people find it useful to follow that. So either follow or invite. If you mention, please do mention that if you're coming through with Mandy's, because there's so many people maybe not in integrity, and they're coming in and there's a lot of scams. So
Totally that.
I can pretty much suss those out, and And not so much I give them a whammy back down there, that doesn't serve me or anybody,
No.
but I send love back down and to reflect them. And it might be a casual thing of karma has a funny thing of flowing back onto people. And that, so yeah, so that's the way, either through my website, wellbeingfoundation.co.nz, there's a contact on there, or the best way is through Jonny Bear on Facebook.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
I'll put those links up when we put this out there too. So yeah, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful stuff, Jonny. And I'm so honored to have you on this chat with me today. And yeah, look forward to a lot more of your posts and what you're putting out there. And I will be directing some of those people, you know, of whoever, I'll be directing them through. So thank you so much for all you do. And you know, originally this was about honouring the pioneers, you know, us who've been doing this for a while and holding the light, holding the line. Yeah.
Well,
you know,
I'd have some of that. But
I love yours. At least you don't have to worry about it in the morning.
easy care.
So yeah, it's great to chat with a lot of the pioneers that have been, you know, holding the fort.
Awesome.
So thank you for all you do, and much love to you and your family. And yeah, we'll see you out
Wonderful.
there.
Sandra says hi as well. And
Oh.
thank you for this opportunity and the platform you create. It feels so light, and to be able to flow through that. And that's how I'd like to share, or we'd all like to share ourselves in a way of love and integrity. So thank you.
Beautiful.